9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Saturday. I'm thankful to hear that anybody watching this or typing in the chat must have survived Friday the 13th, which I was very paranoid about. Had my doctor's appointment, went okay. Had to pay a little bit of a copay, but it was lower than it used to be. Hope you are all as excited as I am for another debate that we're going to have on the internet today, which is where debates are meant to be had. Twitter, of course. There's never been a better platform on Earth to have meaningful discussions with people. But this law is not a new one, actually. If you don't know much about the EU, you know that laws and stuff move fairly slowly. But 9 to 5 Mac reported on this as well. Ben Lovejoy, who's emphasizing that this is a pointless law, which I think I'm going to have to disagree with him respectfully a little bit here, because I think we've run the polls. We've gotten most people's general response, and I think the vast majority of customers want USB-C on the iPhone, which I honestly don't think is that unreasonable, considering Apple helped develop USB-C themselves. They've endorsed it on the MacBook Pros for years, and now they're switching more and more iPads to USB-C. It started with the Pros in 2018. Now the iPad Air is switching to Type-C. Last year, iPad Mini is supposed to switch to Type-C this year, if all goes according to plan. So I really don't see it as that crazy of a thing, just because it's a solid port. We know it works well on smartphones. Even smartphones with water resistance can rock USB-C, so I don't believe durability is a great argument against it. But the European Union, basically in an effort to stop e-waste, which this is a short-term e-waste creator, but it's a long-term e-waste saver. They've been pushing for a common charger for nearly a decade, as it cited the more than 51,000 tons of electronic waste yearly from old chargers, as well as the inconvenience to consumers. Now, I'll be frank here, not to get political, but I don't really support the idea of governments or any non-business entity, not the consumer asking for a feature, but just a big organization of people that are funded by taxpayers telling a company how to design a product specifically. I'll go ahead and say that on the record. Like, if the EU decided that all phones should have a macro lens camera, I would agree. That's pretty stupid. I don't think if a phone doesn't want to have a macro camera, or if a phone doesn't want to have a particular feature outside of the realm of safety, of course, I could understand why a government would want to make sure that Apple or Samsung or Google or whoever the phone company is decides to ship phones that have dangerous features, or the battery is combustible, a la Note 7. I get why, for safety reasons, a government would want to step in, and I agree that they could step in too far with nitpicky features of, like, we've decided all phones should have an OLED display, or all phones should have volume buttons. It's like, if a company wants to take the risk with a weird design, whether it's leaving out certain cameras or including certain cameras as long as they're safe, or taking off certain buttons because that's just a design approach they want to attempt, I say let them do it. Let the consumers decide. If the consumers decide that feature is not worth it, or the feature is stupid, they won't buy that phone, and the company will realize that the phone's not selling and decide to act accordingly. But this one's kind of right in the middle, because this is not merely just the EU being like me and saying USB-C is better, so switch it to USB-C, but they're genuinely thinking this will level the playing field and make it far easier for Android chargers and iOS chargers to be interchanged. And this will long-term allow people to reuse much more of their pre-existing cables, and USB-C is already being mass-produced. It's not a new port. It's not a new standard, obviously, so I don't think it's as big a stretch. But this report is technically coming from Reuters, or Router, I don't know how to say their frickin' name, but they said the European Commission will next month present legislation to establish a common charger for mobile phones and other electronic devices within the 27-nation bloc. A person familiar with the matter said on Thursday, the move will affect iPhone maker Apple more than its rivals. iPhones and most of Apple's products are powered by its Lightning cable. Oh, I hate that they get to say most. I was thinking, is it most? We should take up a poll. Let's see how many Apple products use USB-C. But I guess if you include like the Siri remote, AirPods, iPhones and technically the iPod, I guess, and the budget iPad and the iPad Mini 5, they all still use Lightning. So they might in volume outnumber the USB-C devices they sell, which is pretty much all Macs, all MacBooks, at least. I guess you can't necessarily count Mac Mini and iMac, but they have USB-C ports on them. So Android devices are powered by USB-C connectors. But Ben is against this, or not necessarily against it, just saying that it's pointless, which I'll get into. But I think I wanted to catch up with the chat here. Chris Norton says, does being a member help more than Super Chat? It depends. So if you become a I guess some people don't know. When you become a member, you get billed $2 a month. So every 30 days you get charged $2. There's a little bit of a fee, and then I get most of it. It's somewhat similar on Twitch with memberships. I think YouTube actually lets you keep more of it, if I remember correctly. But if you super chat more than $2, then yeah, I guess it helps a little bit more. But don't worry about it. No stress. Loner Boy, thank you for joining in as well. Let's see. LLE will probably do something along the lines of the headphone jack situation in France. Oh, I got to remember what happened there exactly. It is mostly because most people own iPhones. They should have USB-C. I agree it would be nice. I guess I'm just more on the fence about whether or not it should be a federal mandate. I don't know if the government should get involved necessarily. iPhone 12 Apple leather sleeve is half price right now. Oh, my God. What a great deal. Now everyone can buy their terribly aging leather. Will MagSafe contribute to the world's energy loss? Very little. If you're worried about world energy consumption via MagSafe, then you should also be worried that smokers are contributing to emissions. It's like, not really. I mean, there's far greater problems that are hurting our energy crisis, but the amount of energy that's wasted via MagSafe versus charging your iPhone via Lightning cable is so insignificant compared to most of what our energy consumption is. The vast majority of where our energy is wasted is not really with consumer electronics. It's not even really TVs and desktops. Those don't even use much power compared to refrigerators, HVAC systems, pretty much anything that controls a lot of heating and cooling. That's like 60 to 80% of energy consumption in our household. So the amount of power your phone uses is insanely small. I don't know why people get hung up on that tiny detail. Even if everyone was charging via MagSafe, I don't even think it would make that large an impact on the global grid. It's that in the grand scheme of energy that we're using in our households, it's basically nothing. Why did you switch from Twitch? I like YouTube more, but I remember back in 2018 you went to Twitch. Well, I guess go watch the Tailosive Tech Updates video because I dive into it more there, but I don't want to have to repeat myself for all the people that already know. But I want to get into why Ben says this is pointless. He's saying the EU is well-intentioned, but I've previously explained why a law would be pointless due to the time frames involved. So, assuming the law is finally passed and it does adopt USB-C as the standard, it won't come into effect immediately. Manufacturers plan their new products sometimes years in advance, so they will need to be given an appropriate notice period before the law becomes binding, and that period will be measured in years. I don't know exactly how Ben knows this off the top of his head for sure, but it's a safe assumption to know that with the EU, like if they pass the legislation into law tomorrow and the EU finally decided, hey, everyone's got to switch to USB-C, it would be unreasonable for Apple to switch to it on the iPhone 13 because they're already mass producing it, and that would be far too late a law. So the law would probably get into the details of when you have to start manufacturing products that are USB-C, so I don't think that would necessarily mean they have to suddenly add USB-C to the iPhone 11 and 10R and iPhone SE, which they're still selling on their website. It would probably only apply to new tech products after a certain time period. So I don't think the law will be passed tomorrow, but even if it did, it would probably not go into effect with Apple iPhones until next generation of iPhone 14 or 13S, whatever you want to call it, or potentially even later. But to me, I'm thinking long term here, Ben. I'd go say if I knew we were getting USB-C in the future, that's better than what we know now, which is nothing. if we knew it was a federal mandate and the government was getting involved in saying, yes, they have to switch by 2023, everything on the website's got to be Type-C, I'd be like, okay. I mean, it's going to take a while, but I can be patient. I'll learn my lesson. I'll just wait patiently for Apple to make their move. Just knowing that they eventually will do it would make me happy, though, even if it's not tomorrow. But he also goes on to say, by which time one of two things will have happened in Cupertino. Either Apple will already have adopted USB-C, just as it did with the iPad Pro, which I also think, Ben, this is immense wishful thinking. I mean, I've been accused of assuming too much or hoping too much for the best, but assuming that Apple is going to switch to USB-C anyway is very much speculative and very much unknown at this point. I mean, we've seen analysts and leakers out there claim that Apple will never switch to USB-C because they see themselves as going portless. But he mentioned it will have moved to the position we all expect it to reach eventually, a port-free iPhone which supports only wireless charging. I'm not exactly sure why he throws this in there, because I don't understand why, if the EU passes a law with legislation and it gets approved that all smartphones have to abide by a certain charging standard, whether or not the iPhone is Lightning or portless doesn't really make a difference. The European Union would still mandate that it has to have USB-C. And for those curious, no, this is not just referring to the charge brick. Some people think that it's only talking about the charge brick, but no, this part of legislation is specifically referring to the port on the device itself. So it's not, they wouldn't be passing this legislation if they were just talking about the USB-C brick, because for one, they got rid of the brick anyway. And also, they can ship USB-C bricks with the iPhones if they wanted to. They're not going to, but that's, I don't think, what the e-waste argument is about. It's about all the phones having a common mobile phone charger. So I don't understand why Ben assumes that if it's portless, somehow the iPhone is free of that law. It's like, you can't use Lightning, but yes, you can require MagSafe. Like, I don't quite understand how that would pass. Like, how would they be fine with that? Like, oh, okay, as long as it's not Lightning. That the law is not specifically targeting Lightning connectors. It actually says nothing about the Lightning connector. The law is specifically debating the idea that all smartphones should have a specific connector to reduce e-waste in the long term. I know in the short term it would cause some e-waste because there'd be a ton of Lightning cables that don't work anymore. But the idea would be, just like Apple is doing now, they would ship the charge cable with the phone, and all the new iPhones with USB-C would be shipping with a USB-C cable. Okay, I get it. MagSafe's not a port, yeah, but it doesn't matter. The idea is all the smartphones have to have something. If they're mandating that all the smartphones have to have something, saying MagSafe doesn't suddenly free you of the law. So I don't know why people keep writing that off. They'll probably just go portless anyway. It's like, that wouldn't fix the situation. They still wouldn't be allowed to ship the phones there, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have USB-C, which that's what the law is trying to present. It's not a matter of don't have the Lightning port. It's a matter of you might need to have USB-C. MagSafe is worse for the environment than sticking to Lightning. Whereas I don't think if the e-waste argument maybe, but just if you're just talking about energy loss, it's so insignificant. It's so tiny. If there's anybody out there that's complaining about MagSafe being worse for the environment, you better not have a single combustion engine in your life, because that causes probably 200 times more problems than just the charger for your phone using a little bit more power. It's like a 25% energy loss, I guess, in the translation, but your phone is such a small amount of your energy footprint compared to your car or your HVAC system. If any of you use an air conditioner that's not powered by solar, you're in big trouble. You're not big trouble. I just mean, like, you're using far more than the most inefficient wireless charger would ever use. Watches and other small devices would be exempt. Yeah, I believe this is mainly talking about smartphones. Christopher Cruz says, do you think there are Android users out there that only stick to Android because of USB-C and will consider switching to iOS if iPhone had USB-C? I don't think it would be most Android users, but I've certainly seen that brought up. When we've talked about USB-C on the iPhone in the past, I've seen comments and people on Twitter mention that. Now, we're in the tech community. We're like, people who are really interested in like the latest greatest technology, and we complain about ports and connectors and that kind of thing. So we're probably not a good example. I don't think Apple would win a ton of people over, but I just don't think there would be a tremendous loss by Apple switching to Type-C, frankly. I still run into average consumers that are shocked by that because, you know, my iPad uses Type-C. I've got a Type-C cable on my desk right now, and yet I can't charge my phone with that despite every aspect of that experience being made by Apple. I do not have an EV, no, but I'm also not complaining that MagSafe is worse for the environment, so it's different. MagSafe costs me time to charge, sometimes plugging in and a consistent charge to 80. I guess it could, I mean, MagSafe can go up to 15 watts. So if you're in the scenario where 15 watts is too slow, but 20 watts is fast enough, like, I don't know. It's not substantially faster. It's a little bit faster, but Daniel Holloway says, I really doubt tech-like plugs are going to end the world or cause climate problems. No, we're on the list of global emissions, or on the list of our energy crisis thing, that the smartphone energy consumption is at the very bottom, probably. The only thing probably lower than that is maybe your headphones. I never saw anyone make that argument. If you have to charge your AirPods or charge your technically, any device that uses more power than another device, by that logic, is worse for the environment. It's like slightly, yes, but it's such a small difference that's by no means the problem. The problem is larger vehicles, freighter ships, oil refineries, and agriculture and steel production. There's all kinds of much larger problems. The phones is not the issue. I don't think it would be a conscious draw. It would just naturally reduce waste. I think if people could use cables for MacBooks and iPads and iPhones, and they wouldn't have to have separate ones for each one, it would allow people to reuse their older, like I could reuse my USB-C cables to charge my iPhone. It would simplify the ecosystem. I would definitely not have to take as much with me whenever I go on a trip. That's why I've been an advocate for it for a long time, which is likely coming to iPhone first, portless or USB-C. I don't know. Like, I'm kind of interested in this law because I am not necessarily in favor of governments telling how companies are supposed to design things if it's outside of the realm of safety, but this is a feature I really, really want. So even if I don't necessarily support the idea of governments saying how you need to design things, I like the idea that this is a mandate, which it's almost as if the EU is passing a law that says you have to put 120 hertz on all displays. That's never going to happen, but I'm like, that would be kind of nice. It's like, so I guess I'm somewhat split on it, and their argument is a bit more justified than 120 hertz is, so it's fair enough as to why they want to support it, but I just don't think it's that big a stretch, and I think that most audiences want this. Whenever we run polls on what connector Apple should have on the iPhone, it's overwhelmingly USB-C. It's not a close call. It's not like some people want portless and some people want Lightning. It's like, no, it's overwhelmingly USB-C. So if that's the case, Apple, this would simplify your ecosystem. People could use one cable to charge all their accessories, which I thought is what you liked about AirPower. When they pitched AirPower on stage, they were like, instead of having all these separate cables, you could charge everything with one mat. I'm like, yeah, I like that, Apple. You should try to make that happen more. Obviously, it didn't happen, but there's still other ways to go about charging all your devices with a single cable. And if all of our devices charged with USB-C, I'd say it's worth it. But I agree. It's USB-C already is the standard amongst so many of Apple's accessories. And by far the biggest thing I love about Type-C over Lightning is that it's fully reversible. Lightning is somewhat reversible because you can plug it in this way and you can flip it over and plug it in this way. But no one ever has made Lightning to Lightning cables. It's always Lightning to USB-A or Lightning to USB-C, which to me it's silly to have reversible connector on one end and reversible connector on the other end, but they're not the same connector. Whereas our iPad Pros and our MacBook Airs and our MacBook Pros, these all come with Type-C to Type-C connectors, which makes life far easier. Please don't spam. It doesn't help anything. Oh my God. Will is awesome. Thank you for becoming a supporter. But you guys know where I was going. You know, C to C cables are great. I love being able to, you know, you don't have to check, am I plugging in, oh, this end of the cable has to go in the brick and this end of the cable has to go on the iPad or the Mac. No, with Type-C, it doesn't matter. Either end goes into either end. There's this bi-directional cables, basically. Is that the term? I'm not sure if I'm getting the term right, but if it is bidirectional, then I would say that. Lightning is not bidirectional. You have to plug in the lightning connector to the device and the other end into something else, and it's not going to be lightning. So, anyway, Voltage Dylan, thank you for the super chat. Loving the videos, Drew. What are your thoughts on Apple scanning our photos in iOS 15? I have mixed feelings about it. I've talked about it in previous live streams. The main reason I've seen people asking me to make videos on it. The main reason I haven't is because it quickly divulges. I've discussed it with people in our Discord several times, but it quickly divulges into a moral discussion. It's more of a moral debate than it is a tech debate. But I've also seen a lot of people very confused on how the system works, or people overestimating how much scanning is going on. So for the record, Apple is only scanning photos on iCloud. Apple is not scanning locally stored pictures. And this is labeling software that Apple has already... iOS 15 has scanned your pictures for years. It just automatically labels them for different things. Like if you want to look up pictures of cars or pictures of sunsets, it's an algorithm done locally on device that scans your pictures and tries to find those types of photos. So that type of scanning has been done for years. This is not new. And also this type of scanning has been done for Amazon Web Services. It's been done on Facebook. It's been done on Google Photos for years. I don't know why no one knows or cares that it's been done elsewhere and doesn't appear to have been abused. But I will admit I understand the concern because people are worried that this can be abused or put into the wrong hands. From what I've seen, Craig Federighi has met with the press quite often and talked to people about how Apple actually does the photo scanning much more securely than others do, because it's comparing hashes to multiple known databases, not governments, not government-owned databases, but it's not like a person is sitting there scanning your pictures. It's looking for exact matches of sensitive material that are already stored on a database, and it's decoding those images into hashes. So it's not actually looking at picture to picture, it's looking at code to code. If this code matches illegal material, which for Apple's own liability's sake, I can somewhat understand. They don't want iCloud servers to be storing illegal content. And again, Apple was like the last company to do this. It's not an easy choice, and I don't think there's an easy answer. It's the most difficult of discussions of, like, on one hand, if you don't do this, what are you risking? You know, it's like, okay, people have their privacy, but now there's, you know, creeps out there that can store illegal content, and they're using Apple services to do it. While on the other hand, people are like, well, where does it end? Like, if you're going to allow this type of content to be scanned and located, then what else are you going to scan and locate in the future? And the truth is, from the conversations I've had with people that work in government security and how the government can spy on you, the government already has the tools to abuse their power. And frankly, they already do, probably more regularly than you'd expect. And I do think that it's likely a little bit unrealistic to assume that Apple was this godsend savior of mankind. Like the government would always go, dang it, I want to see what's on this phone, but Apple stops us. We can't because that thief used an iPhone. Like the story with the FBI wanting Apple to unlock a certain phone, it ends with the government getting into it anyway. That's how the story ended. And I think it's a noble cause to fight for, and I think Apple definitely cares about privacy more than the average company. But I do somewhat see it as a bit of a lost cause, just because Apple has marketed the privacy thing for years, but then they always get caught doing something again. And I this is not the first time. This one, I would say, is even not as bad because it's being used for a good cause, and I can support the cause of wanting to catch, you know, people with illegal material and sensitive images. I'm not getting hyper specific because I don't want to get demonetized, but Randy B, thank you for the thumbs up super sticker. Frankly, I think that what Apple got caught in the past doing was using Siri recordings from our phones and HomePods and having them manually reviewed by a third-party organization, as in not an algorithm. Like there were human beings listening to Siri recordings without people knowing. That happened a few years ago, and Apple got caught doing it. Everyone got upset, and then Apple changed their viewpoint. They were like, okay, now it's off by default, and you can opt to share audio recordings to make Siri better if you want. But they didn't do that until everyone got mad at them. So this is just when Apple slips up. What do you think happens when Apple doesn't slip up and they're able to do stuff without getting caught? Like, the Siri spying stuff was worse because they didn't tell people. I agree. And this was not recently. This happened, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And, like, this, at least I can support the cause of, and I guess the main reason I have a hard time getting angry about it, although I understand people's concerns because you guys want digital privacy and you don't want Apple scanning your pictures even if they're looking for exact matches. It's not an algorithm looking for similar pictures. Okay, I think that's the most common misconception, is there's a bunch of news agencies and blogs and stuff oversimplifying the announcement and making it sound worse than it was. People were thinking, oh, if a parent or something took pictures of their newborn child, that would get flagged and falsely labeled. It's not looking for new images. It's looking for exact matches. And if you're worried about the government abusing their power, they do. They very much do. They already can. Apple's not stopping them. Government has access to tons of money and tons of time, and they can hack their way into devices if they feel like they want to. And I side a little bit more on the argument that digital privacy is a myth, essentially. If the government wants to find something on you, if you're trying to keep something from them, don't keep it on a cloud service, I guess. They have their ways, and nothing is hack-proof. So the government using this technology to their advantage, it might speed up things a little bit, but ultimately this was not a impenetrable wall. And Google, Amazon, Facebook, everybody else already does this. Apple was like the last company to not do this. And Apple's method of checking is also much more private and secure than everyone else's way of checking. So I guess that's why I'm like, after the whole Siri recording thing was caught, I don't know why anybody believed Apple actually cared about privacy. Like, I see people freaking out now about, like, Apple doesn't really care about privacy after this photo scanning thing. I was like, they never did. It was always a marketing trick. It was always like an emphasis to get people feeling comfortable. And to be fair, there are certain steps Apple takes that make it harder for your data to be breached and hacked. So they do put their money where their mouth is, but it's not impenetrable. It's not like, if the government's what you're worried about, that's always been at risk. Like, probably the best thing about Apple caring about privacy we get that's just convenient and comfortable for us is like signing up through applications and services through Apple. Like, you can sign in with Apple. That allows you to hide your email, and you can ask apps not to track you. So you don't get as much, targeted advertising, or they don't build up a data profile on you. So those are real. Those aren't fake. Those are features that we get to benefit firsthand from. So just be honest with your audience. They deserve at least that. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Like, it would be, I see a lot of channels right now uploading videos about why this is terrible and why it needs to be fixed or changed in some way. But if I uploaded a video and did that same argument of this is wrong, Apple should care more about privacy, and this could be abused, I wouldn't be honest with myself, just because of the conversations I've had with people that work in the government, friends, family, and I'm like, I just personally don't believe digital privacy is a thing. especially if you've listened to Edward Snowden talk about how the government can spy on you. Basically, any device with internet and a battery, there's ways. If you connect it to Wi-Fi, there's ways for them to get in. So after hearing that and after knowing what I've known, I'm just been like, yeah, I don't buy this whole myth that I think a lot of people buy into, that Apple must be this savior of mankind that stops all governments from interfering with our digital stuff. It's like, no, they can try, but they're not going to win. They can do their best, but at the end of the day, I don't believe digital privacy is a thing. Like, there are ways to abuse any service, any power, and that's still there. Even outside of the internet, if you're worried about the government planting evidence on you to get you arrested, they can do that now. They don't need the internet for that. But if oh my God, you guys are annoying. Please don't. Please. So many people are like, I'm going to get my comment read if I spam really, really hard. No, it just makes me ban you and want to not answer your question. Let's see. Google scans all your Gmails, and yet no one is complaining about Google training AI with your personal mail. Google accounts have been shut down back in 2014 for CSAM content. I know. It's just anytime there's a new change, people get all freaked out. Jonathan Garby says you have to do that on your own and decide which companies to trust with that information. If there's information you're afraid of someone else knowing about, don't put it in the hands of a company if you're connecting it on the internet or even on a device locally. Yeah, like Jonathan is saying, you can't trust any company to look out for your privacy. Exactly. I wouldn't trust Apple. I wouldn't trust anybody. If there was certain private info that I did not want anyone to know about, I would not be storing it elsewhere. Haken says, since most phones are water resistant, when do you think we will be comfortable dropping phones in pools/water? When they're more resistant, or never because it's so ingrained in us? Well, I think that's more of a personal thing. I'm kind of comfortable with doing it now. I went swimming at a friend's house the other day, and I took my phone with me. I had it in my pocket. And also I took my phone with me when we went inner tubing down a river a couple weeks back. I wasn't worried. But if it's, what is it, IP68 water resistance up to 4 meters deep for 30 minutes, and all of the tests, water tests I've seen with the iPhone since then have even been better than that. That they actually last longer than 30 minutes in deeper than 4 meters from all the durability tests I've watched online. So I'm not concerned about it now, to be honest with you. I think the main thing they're worried about would be probably the main thing they're worried about would be high pressure water. So if the water is hitting your phone at an extreme pressure, like a pressure washer or a hose, or if you were skiing on the back of a boat and being pulled really, really fast and the phone gets hit with water really quickly, that's how you can break some of the rubber seals on the inside of the phone. But I haven't even seen people do that, but that's probably the only thing I'd be concerned about. But just in a pool and stuff, no, I'm not worried about that. Like for the general user, I don't know if mentally people just probably want to treat their tech nice. There's not really much advantage to trying to use your phone underwater because the touchscreen's not going to work anyway. And there's not much advantage to using your phone when your hands are wet because the touchscreen's not going to understand what you're saying. So there's not really a great reason, even if our phones are really, really water resistant, or dare I say waterproof, which we're never supposed to say, I think that people would still be hesitant to ever bring their phone in the water, especially if you're on like a lake or an ocean, because the water moves so much and you're worried that if you drop it, it's going to get stuck in the sand and you can't find it, or if you're in a lake, it could fall. Our phones don't float. Anything that doesn't float that's worth a lot of money, you typically don't want to use in the water. That's, a lot of jewelry and wedding rings are probably water resistant, and they won't rust because they're made of non-rustable material, but people still don't take them off or bring them in the water with them because they're worried they might lose them. It's kind of the same thing with phones. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Thanks for asking. Okay. Then turn off iCloud Photos. Yeah, if you don't like any of the new scanning features, just don't use iCloud Photos. It's as simple as that. You can just turn it off. There's also a difference between saltwater and freshwater. I believe it, but in my experience, I haven't noticed. Like, I've taken my iPhone into saltwater and filmed stuff, and it was fine. Yeah, water plus electronics equals never a good idea. Even if the electronics are water resistant, most people are just saying, shouldn't. Sib Cinematographer says, just got on wondering if Apple will adopt USB-C if the EU force them to on their iPhones, or they'll just carry on using Lightning or maybe adopt wireless only charging. Well, the idea would be if the EU forced them to use Type-C, they would have to change. They couldn't sell their iPhones in the EU if they still had Lightning or if they were portless. I don't know why people suddenly think the law wouldn't apply if they got rid of the port. I personally would not mind a portless iPhone. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea because it's likely going to steer a lot of people away from getting a new iPhone if they know they can't use a connector or their old accessories don't work. But I'm not most people. I'm kind of always been about, like, let me get used to the new standard. If a new port comes out and it's way better than the old one, I'm like, cool, great. I'm going to get rid of all my old cables. I'm going to buy new ones. Once Apple announced MagSafe, I was like, cool, I'm getting all MagSafe. I'm throwing out all my old Qi chargers. I didn't throw them out. I gave them to people who needed them. But I switched to MagSafe on everything. Now I have MagSafe at my desk. I use MagSafe on my nightstand. I embrace the new standard. So if Apple was like, MagSafe is the only standard now, and there's no more ports, I would be fine because I almost never use Lightning on my iPhone currently. It charges on MagSafe Duo overnight, or it charges in here on MagSafe. And I very rarely ever got into the situation where I was like, oh crap, I got to use the Lightning cable. Could they get around it with a USB-C adapter? I don't think so. I think it's talking about the hardware itself. But from what I've read on this law, it sounds primarily about the connector being on the phone. It's not being in the box or included in the package. But this would not be a overnight transition, for the record. The law would have to apply towards all newly designed phones that have yet to reach production. So even if the law was approved and passed tomorrow, it would still not probably be until next year that the iPhone would switch to USB-C. And the law is not going to get passed tomorrow. And also the iPhone XR, iPhone 11, iPhone SE, those would keep using Lightning. So it would be a slow, gradual process. But I do think in the end it would be worth it. So I'm kind of for it. Portless would cause most people would lose their mind. I don't think most people would lose their mind, but it would definitely mildly annoy certain people. You know, people were saying the same thing about Apple getting rid of the charge brick. I remember when that was rumored, everyone in the tech community was losing their mind. They were like, okay, this is the last, Apple's gone too far. This is it. It's never going to work. People are going to switch to Android. I hate this. Apple's so stringy. They're terrible. I hate them. And then the iPhone 12 outsold everybody. No one cared. Literally. Like, it did not impact any buying decision. Were people mad? Online, on Twitter? Oh, yeah, heck yeah. People get mad about anything these days. But did it stop someone who wanted to buy a new iPhone? No. If someone wanted a new iPhone, that little 5-watt charge brick wasn't going to change their mind, or not getting a fast charger wasn't going to change their mind. So USB-C doesn't necessarily have to happen. I think my personal guess is that Apple's internal goal is to eventually get portless because they would rather just have a holeless, simple metal glass sandwich, and it's just as simple to make as possible. Plus, they would likely want to replace the connector with extra battery capacity or slightly improve water resistance. I'm not saying functionally it would add very much, but the reason Apple removed the headphone jack wasn't really to add very much to the experience. Is just that they believed in another standard that was superior. They thought wireless headphones and AirPods were better. That was it. It wasn't because, oh, now that the headphone jack is gone, we can fit so much more room in there. Like, if you guys watch, what's his name? Strange Parts, he added the headphone jack back to the iPhone. Like, he just had to take out a couple extra pieces of plastic, but he could do it. Like, they could definitely slap a headphone jack in current day iPhones. You know, Samsung figured out how to do it with their futuristic phones. So it's not like it was impossible for them to have a jack. It was just that Apple decided that for smartphones, because they still have a headphone jack on Macs, so they see a use for it there and an argument for it to stay on the Mac, even if it's really thin, like the 24-inch iMac. They still made space for the headphone jack on the side. But with the iPhone, at least, they were like, people listening to music or watching movies on their phone, wireless is good enough. I know that there are objective downsides, like people say, you know, my DAC or audio quality or latency or whatever is still better with wired. It's like, yeah, you're probably right, but Apple doesn't care for the average consumer, and it seems to have worked out for them so far. And they were really excited about pushing AirPods. And I could see a very similar situation one day happening if the EU doesn't get this law and order. Boom, boom. If the EU doesn't make this happen, then I could see Apple getting rid of the Lightning connector and just going all in on MagSafe and saying this is the future. Everyone on the internet loses their minds. Everyone gets angry and upset, and Apple still sells the most popular phone in the world because everyone's like, oh, it would probably come with a MagSafe puck, though. That's the thing. It's like, okay, when you're spending $1,000 on your new iPhone, you got to buy a $20 brick for the new charge puck, but you're still going to use your phone the same way. You just slap the connector on the back and it starts charging. There's a few handful of situations that have to be redesigned. Factory resets. They've already have protocols within tvOS since it got rid of its maintenance ports. If there's a system failure, the OS is crashing, you could just wipe the whole drive and reinstall a new OS. That's how Macs work. And system recovery can be redesigned to be portless. They can do more iTunes sync. They can do iTunes syncing over Wi-Fi already, I believe. But yeah, there's ways around it. I haven't seen a great argument yet as to what would stop Apple from going portless. It's like, but I use wired CarPlay. It's like, they don't care. They're going to tell you, get an adapter or get a new car. It's Apple here. Let's see. How is MagSafe Duo for regular use and taking it on trips? Oh, I love it. It's very pricey. I understand it's expensive, but I've yet to find a 2-in-1, you know, iPhone and Apple Watch charger that's that small. You can fold it up and fit it in your back pocket. It's so easy, especially when we're packing for something in a hurry, which most of the time we end up packing in a hurry. So, yeah, I've got no complaints with MagSafe Duo other than its Lightning. It would have been perfect if it was USB-C, because then I would have been able to bring one cable and one brick on my vacations and stuff. When you have CPUs this good, no one cares in mass. Yeah. Average consumer would get over it, just like they got over not having the headphone jack. Like, oh no. Anyway, yeah, Qualcomm is kind of crap. I agree. Chris Norton says, I like my 6S, but I wish it had USB-C. Yeah, I think most of us do. You can't set up Wi-Fi sync without the cable plugged in. They can find a way. I'm not sure. Like, I think Apple's looking at the usage of how many people are syncing with iTunes with a wire. I bet it's extremely low. I think most people with phones these days are all doing, you know, your phone has Wi-Fi. You can download music that way. You can set it up that way. You can even do iCloud backups. In fact, if people are complaining that, well, with a portless iPhone, it would be harder to do a, you know, local backup, that's even more reason for Apple to remove it. You're giving them ideas now, because at that point, Apple is going to be like, oh, yeah, we can sell you on more iCloud storage. They want you to get more iCloud storage. That's their services revenue. So that's an argument to get rid of it sooner rather than later. But my guess is Apple's just worried about the backlash and that would impact new iPhone sales too heavily, because they're already running out of ideas of like what's going to be new on this year's iPhone. What are we going to get people excited for? And if there's any downsides, if there's any reasons to not get a new iPhone, that's going to hurt sales. So they're like, we can't afford to have any downsides right now. So I'm not sure exactly why they're sticking with Lightning for so long. I feel like it's almost 10 years old now, and there's definitely a better standard out there that Apple themselves is using. So USB-C sounds like the crowd pleaser option to me. I feel like that would save the most amount of steps. You do only need one cable if you use a USB-C adapter to MagSafe. Possibly, but there's stuff other than just charging, I guess. Jonathan says, I got a brand new Subaru Forester. It only has wired CarPlay built in. I bought a $100 dongle just to make it wireless. You can convert. It just costs. Yeah, and Apple's done that in the past. It's like, okay, this new MacBook doesn't have a CD drive. Oh, I want to use my CDs with a MacBook. Okay, you got to buy an adapter. It's $80. That's crazy. Yeah, okay, you'll get over it. Look around us. Now all laptops don't have CD drives. So they pushed it, they endorsed the standard and it happened. This could be the same thing with portless. None of those but we need a port for this type things make sense to me. Every argument I've seen has been Apple doesn't care about that demographic. It's the same argument as, but what if I want to charge my phone and use wired headphones at the same time? Headphone jack makes it hard to do that. It's yeah, Apple doesn't care. They're you'll get over it. Zach says, I used to work at Apple, and at least for the time I was there, they did have a type of social media for employees only. I know that is something you've been saying they should try. It wasn't really used. Well, I imagine so. Why would the employees use an employee only? That's basically Slack. You don't want to go on a social media that's just your coworkers. You spend all day with them. You want to get away from them. Social media is more for friends or brands or people you know personally. That's more interesting. But it wouldn't be shocked that there's a in-company social media no one cares about. Let's see. When will you invite a guest on your podcast? I don't know. We sometimes like to have guests. Usually we wait until someone's unavailable. But yeah, the thing about guests, I like having guests on from time to time, but I definitely don't want it to be a regular thing, kind of Joe Rogan has someone new on his show every day, but it basically turns into an interview process, because what I've enjoyed about the tech podcast and EV podcast is that the recurring people that come on, we get to have a conversation together about subjects and exchange ideas, whereas when you have a guest on who's clearly not always there, they are kind of the star of the show. So it feels not that that's bad. That's probably how it should work if you invite someone on. You ask them questions. But it very much quickly becomes, okay, this is the whoever the guest is show, and we have to ask them a bunch of questions, and usually it results in them not really having a bunch of questions in response. So it's good. It's fun to do once in a while. But we've had several guests on our show multiple times. It was literally just to brag about sales or something. It was dumb. Yeah, I doubt that anyone would use that. Just remove the lightning port and USB-C and bring back the headphone jack for both audio and charging, like the iPod Shuffle. E-uploads, you're right. We need iPod Shuffle charge method. That kind of sounds wonderful. How many Doge and Bitcoin donations do you get? Yeah, surprisingly more than I thought. Someone asked me the other day, they were like, can I donate some Doge? And I was like, sure, I guess. And then I updated the description and more started coming in, and I was like, what the heck? Why are there so many people? Why, if you like Doge so much, why is everyone trying to get rid of it? I don't know, but I'll take it. If someone wants to offer me your currency, crypto of any kind, I'm just all right, thanks. Let's see. You're missing out on my Twitch Prime subscription right now. Dang it, Brandon. I'm sorry. We've lost him. Should I buy the 12 Pro or wait for the 13? Chelsea 664. You're this close. I mean, we're likely less than a month away at this point. I mean, let me look at the calendar. If your current phone is working okay, just at least wait. Even if the 13 Pro doesn't interest you, even if you're not interested in anything the 13 Pro is rumored to have, just wait, because then you'll be able to get the 12 Pro for cheaper. There's not much advantage in buying a 12 Pro right now, unless you found a really, really good deal on one. If you found a 12 Pro for $500, I'd be like, okay, well, that's pretty good. Sure, go ahead. But next month, it's probably going to be a Tuesday, either the 7th or the 14th, and today's August 14th. So yeah, about a month from now, we'll know everything about them. Let's see. You should turn one of the iPhone boxes upside down again, Drew. It was really funny. Oh, see, this is what I was afraid of. I had a few iPhone boxes turned upside down. It bothered everyone. It blew their minds that there was an upside down icon behind me, even though it doesn't impact the video at all. It frustrated everyone, and they were constantly asking me to fix them. So now I fixed them, and we finally reached the point where people are like, flip them over again. It's it's never going to end. I feel that with wireless, there's a lot of inefficiency. Even though Apple uses magnets to make sure the coils align perfectly, there's also heat loss while charging directly. Use a wire to 90%. It's the same case with anything wireless. Anything that's wireless is always going to be less efficient. You know, your Wi-Fi is always going to be better with Ethernet instead of over the air. Your audio is always going to be technically better with a wired connection versus a wireless connection. There's always going to be compromises for the sake of convenience, but that's what MagSafe is about. It's more convenient. One-handed charging. It's very easy to just drop your phone on the MagSafe puck. You don't have to grab the lightning cable with one hand, grab your phone with the other hand, and line them up correctly and plug it in. You drop it, it starts charging. It's convenient, but yes, there is, of course, some energy loss, but it will always be there. All things have inefficiencies for the sake of convenience, you know? Like in an EV, if you turn on the air conditioner, you'll feel a lot more comfortable because you won't be really hot, but the AC in the car is going to use more energy and lower your range. You know, there's always going to be inefficiencies for the sake of convenience, but we put up with them all the time. A lot of people are obviously going to use Wi-Fi over Ethernet because it's far more convenient to have an internet connection wherever you go in the house. It doesn't matter. You'll have a connection. Is it not as fast as a connection or as an efficient as a connection if you were plugged in via Ethernet? No, but you have more freedom. It's the same thing with MagSafe. Let's see. Problem with USB-C is that C is not just C. There's a big difference between generations. Not really. I mean, there's certain Type-C ports that do other things, but the shape is the same. And for the most part, they're all pretty universally accepted. There's a handful of accessories that don't work with all USB-C chargers, but they're not usually Apple. Like you can use your USB-C cable that came with your iPad to charge your MacBook. You can use your MacBook or iPad charger to charge your Android. So there's different levels of USB-C, obviously. I don't know why people expect it to be the opposite. We're not going to put Thunderbolt 4 connectivity on a smartphone. It just doesn't need to transfer that much data, and it doesn't need to add to that much cost. It would just be silly. So there's obviously going to be different levels of Type-C, but there's different levels of ports now. That's what happens anytime you design a port or a connector that's trying to replace a bunch, there's going to be different tiers, but at least they're all the same shape. It's no longer going to be, oh, this is HDMI and this is DisplayPort, so they can't go together. It's like, as long as the shape is the same, it's progress. Yeah, there are certain cables for certain types of things, but USB-C specifically is referring to the connector. So I don't agree with you, Crone, saying USB-C is not just USB-C. Yeah, USB-C is the shape. There's different standards. There is just, there are certain USB-C connectors that are just standard, like USB 3 speeds, and there are other USB-C connectors that are Thunderbolt, but you put which one makes the most sense for the product. On a MacBook Pro or on an iMac, makes sense to have Thunderbolt, whereas on a Pixel 3a, it doesn't make sense to give that Thunderbolt. But at least the same charger you charge your MacBook with can still charge that Pixel. That's the future. That's how we want it to be in the future, just one connector. Ben Rayner's asking me to explain the difference between USB-C and Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is basically the bandwidth of the connector, whereas USB-C is a type of connector. Trying to think of a good hyperbole for this. I don't know. Maybe this works or not, but think of it as the difference between like Model 3 and a performance Model 3. Performance Model 3 is still a Model 3, but it goes way faster than a long-range Model 3 or a standard-range Model 3 because it has, beefed-up motors in it and that type of thing. So it's kind of the square/rectangle thing. All Thunderbolt connectors now, all Thunderbolt 3 and 4 connectors are USB-C, but not all USB-Cs are Thunderbolt. It's like one is always the other, but not vice versa. So you can get a specific type of Model 3 that's faster than all the other Model 3s, but that doesn't mean all of them are performance models. So Thunderbolt is also an Intel patented thing. That's true. But now there's something that's very similar to Thunderbolt, except it's not patented by Intel, called USB 4, and it has pretty much the same bandwidth and data speed transfer. But basically, 24-inch iMac might actually be a good example of this that I could explain. The 24-inch iMac has only USB-C connectors on the back, right? But 2 of them are Thunderbolt and 2 of them are just normal Type-C. So what it basically means is the ones with the little icons here, these support high data, high bandwidth. So if you're outputting to a very high resolution monitor, or you're transferring very large files and you want them to transfer quickly, they will move faster in these connectors. These are the same shape, so you can technically plug in the same monitor cable here, but the bandwidth will be lower. So this is the type of connector that you'd likely want to reserve for your phone charger, or in the iMac's case, your Magic Keyboard charger, your Magic Mouse charger. You want to plug into these because they can output power, but not as much data. So you reserve these for your external hard drives or your external monitors or your cameras that you want high bandwidth output for. Even though they're all the same connector, some just have faster speed than the other. I hope that explains it. Sebastian Colodi, thank you for the super chat. I don't agree with your views on iPad. If you could just run Mac apps on iPad, there would be no reason for developers to make pro apps designed for touch. The whole point of an iPad. I don't. Okay, well, I'll counter it. Thank you for the donation, but my point is the iPad has been around for a long time. There are still inherent flaws built in with iPadOS that prevent developers from making pro apps to be as good as they are on the Mac. A good example would be LumaFusion, who is trying their very best. Oh my God, sorry. Starlink's lagging. Dishy McFlatface is looking for a satellite. Give me a second. But basically, we've had iPads for over 10 years now, and the Apple Silicon ever since 2018 has been astoundingly good. We've had great performance. There's no CPU or GPUs holding back the iPad at this point. In fact, it's pretty overkill. But pro applications are trying their very best to optimize applications for the iPad, but iPadOS fundamentally stops them. A good example would be LumaFusion, which is trying to make a video editing application as advanced as possible for the iPad, but the architecture of iPadOS does not support ProRes. So simply because you can't get ProRes on the iPad, now LumaFusion has an inherent flaw against Final Cut. So you could try to optimize more apps for touch. You could try to get more pro applications that work well on iPadOS, but if iPadOS is fundamentally stopping them from taking advantage of certain things that macOS doesn't, it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying I'm not seeing tremendous growth with the pro applications that we've had on iPad Pros for several years now, and I don't see that changing based on Apple's interest in keeping the iPad like, yeah, Swift Playgrounds, or yeah, you get iMovie but not Final Cut. You get GarageBand but not Logic. So I think Apple is still fundamentally thinking the iPad can't be more than this. So if Apple themselves is not optimizing things for touch, I don't expect third parties to. They can try, but they can only do so much. Eventually there's certain inherent flaws. But thank you for the donation. I do want more pro apps to come to the iPad, and I would change my tune about macOS on the iPad if I saw growth, if I saw development with iPadOS getting better and getting more functional and getting more practical each year, and I just don't see that. Like, we got 16 gigs of RAM, we got the M1 chip on the iPad Pro, and the biggest thing they could think of was like quick notes. You swipe up from the corner and you can take notes with the Apple Pencil, and last year it was like Scribble. You could like look up things in the search bar with the Apple Pencil, and there's still only like 2 apps can be run at the same time, and it still just feels like iOS on a big screen. It doesn't feel like a separate platform. That's why it only took like 5 minutes on stage to talk about iPadOS. There wasn't much new things to talk about. Let's see. I want to sell my Aunt 2018 iPad Pro to her and get me the M1 iPad she has out of date. Good idea or bad idea? Get me the M1? I don't know why you need to sell your 2018. What do you think the M1's going to do? You mean the center stage? Is that what you want? I guess if your iPad's actually interested in it, then I suppose it's a good idea. But probably the best advantages of the M1 iPad would be mini LED, center stage. That's about it. Performance-wise, there's not going to be a noticeable difference, in my opinion. We know they don't care about making it a pro thing. How do we know this? The virtual KVM thing they're adding with Monterey. Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm just glad I won't have anything going on at the time, so I'll be able to order a 13 when it goes live. Yeah, I still plan on being live for the pre-order event. Actually, I have an idea. I'll slip out there that I'm not sure what color of the iPhone Pro Max I'm going to get yet. So I was thinking I'll go live like 30 minutes before the pre-orders go up, and then I'll start a community poll in the chat, and whichever is the top voted option in the poll, I will buy that one. The only reason I'm hesitant to do that is I'm worried there might be like a pink one, and I don't want pink. So if everyone votes pink, then I'm going to be stuck with a pink iPhone for like 5 years, because I plan on keeping this next iPhone for a while. Maybe they put the M1 in the iPad just for cost savings. Probably. It's probably simpler that way than marketing it as a A14X chip or something. If it's still a 5nm chip and it has the same performance cores and efficiency cores, then yeah. I think the whole reason Apple was comfortable making the transition away from Intel and into Apple Silicon is because the chip on the iPad Pro had been advanced and upgraded to the point where they were like, okay, this is Mac worthy. And before it was just kind of experimentation on the iPad. Okay, iPad has really good performance. Now it's good enough to compete with the Macs. Let's start bringing it to the Mac. So whatever the M1 equivalent is was probably ready for the iPad Pro anyway. I'm sad that every other company put 5G in the title of the phones. How are my friends supposed to know my phone has 5G when it's just called iPhone 12? Oh, I pray to God that's sarcasm, Zach, because I do genuinely appreciate Apple not putting 5G in the name, despite Samsung still putting 5G in the name, despite all their phones having 5G for years now. They still want to flex that. Let's vote for pink, boys. Well, we don't know. There might be a pink option. There might not. I don't know. In your MacBook vid, I commented that I'll pay for the Touch Bar as an add-on. You asked me how much I'll be willing to pay. My answer is that I would want to go as far as $500. Are you serious? RM Projects. Wow. That's a lot. I thought I was crazy for saying $300. I don't know exactly what the difference in manufacturing would cost, but I hope Apple sees this or hears about this at least. Apple, you should know how much extra someone would be willing to pay for the Touch Bar. We should run a poll, actually. I'll ask. How much would you pay extra for a Touch Bar? That's the question. I'm formulating it now. I'll start with $100 plus, or so. I guess if you wouldn't pay extra for the Touch Bar at all, maybe I should have an option for that. $100. Okay, I'll work within a range, I guess. The options will be $100 plus, $300 plus, or $500 plus. That's probably going to be the least popular. And then the last option will be $0. Like you don't want Touch Bar. So vote for don't want Touch Bar if you wouldn't pay anything extra. It's like if you include it, I'm fine, but if it gets rid of it, I would not pay extra for it. We'll ask the community. Let's see. I got my dad's 12 Pro Max for $300 when Verizon had their iPhone sale. Wow, that's pretty low. Was that with trade-in? It makes sense for other manufacturers to put 5G in the name on some models because they have both 4G and 5G models. Do they? Because they kept calling it the Z Fold 3 5G and the Z Flip 3 5G. Do those have non-5G variants? Wow. The poll is impressive to me how many people just said don't want Touch Bar at all. Well, I guess we only have 80 people voting so far. Let's see. I'd pay more to not have a Touch Bar. There's another option. I can only put 4 options, I think. I don't think it'll let me put more than that, so that would be funny. We should do more polls. I try to think of at least one poll to do for every live stream, but sometimes it just doesn't naturally. I'll pay an extra $500 just so I can not have a Touch Bar. I'd like a larger Touch Bar that can have extra uses. Oh, like those Windows machines. My primary problem with it is how much I accidentally trigger it and how lacking use it is in most of my apps. Unless I'm debugging stuff, I have no use for it. I don't even need it for third-party applications. Like, you can turn the touch bar into function keys if you don't want anything fancy. Like, you can set it to be function keys at all times. But what I loved it for was just being able to swipe to change volume and brightness. I thought that felt way more interactive and dynamic than having to button spam. Every time you change volume on a normal keyboard, you have to go or change brightness, you have to spam the button over and over again. With the touch bar, I could just grab it and swipe really quick. If I wanted to quickly lower the volume or raise the volume, I could just tap and swipe. I love that. And it sounds petty, but I love the predictive text. Whenever I was typing in an application, wasn't sure how to spell something, I could just tap on the predictive text options in the corner. Plus, like the emoji options. If you spend a lot of time, like I use Twitter on my Mac quite a bit, and I also use iMessage on my Mac quite a bit. Like I don't even have my iPhone on me; it's in the bedroom right now because I just use my iPad and my Mac on my desk for everything. And when you want to use emojis for certain things, and you just have the option. Ooh, another great one that I loved about the touch bar. Man, I'm gonna miss it. But one thing I loved about the touch bar is when you were watching a YouTube video, you could tap one button to activate picture-in-picture. It would just show up on the playhead. You'd just be watching a video and just be like, done. Now it's picture-in-picture. Instead of right now, I have to double right-click or use some keyboard shortcut and get creative with it. But I just loved having one button for all my picture-in-picture needs. That was really nice. So I know there's workarounds, but they're more complicated. And I love the podcast music, shortcuts, and volume slider. Yeah, I'll miss it. I'm still gonna be sad. Too much accidental trigger. I don't know what you mean. How are you accidentally triggering it? I feel like you have to very actively reach to the top. What are you triggering? If you're accidentally triggering the touch bar, I feel like you would accidentally trigger function keys anyway. Excuse me. I found the touch bar neat, but even when I was editing videos, I didn't use it for anything other than autocorrect, but I understand how some people could find it very useful. Yeah, I agree. Like, I didn't use it much for video editing, but I don't use my function keys for video editing either. So I never saw that as a good reason to get rid of it, just because third parties weren't taking advantage of it. It's like, yeah, but even just the native first-party thing. Triggering different buttons? How? You just reach up and tap it. If you don't want to tap it, don't tap it. Like, wouldn't you accidentally touch your function keys anyway? In Mac and MacBook, the only... I don't know what you're saying. What do you use your Apple Watch for? I want an excuse to buy one. That only use I would have is changing music volume on my iPhone. That's a good example. I do use it to change the music if I'm listening to stuff on my headphones, but I also use it to unlock my Mac. I find that feature super duper useful. Every single day I come in here, slap the space bar, and it unlocks thanks to my watch. Also, if you have an iPhone with Face ID and you wear a mask, which sounds like we got to wear masks more, at least where I am, then if you swipe up with the iPhone, it'll unlock even with a mask on because it registers that your watch is wearing. It even will unlock your phone pretty regularly, even if you just have even without a mask on, even if it just gets a false negative. Like sometimes my iPhone is sitting, on the couch, or it's not really looking directly at my face, and I tap it, it'll misread my hand or misread my face, and it'll just unlock anyway because of my Apple Watch, which I kind of like. So the activity tracking is really nice. Notification management's probably the biggest thing for me. Like, I love just being able to see, is this text important? Do I need to get my phone out, or is it just a non-important text that I can get to later? Whereas if you don't have a watch, you have to kind of get the buzz on your phone and check, okay, is this important? Is it not important? And just the flick, so much quicker. The other feature I use and my wife uses pretty much daily is the pinging. So anytime I don't know where my phone is, if it gets dark at night or something, I can't tell if my phone got slipped between the couch cushions or I left it in the bedroom or something. I just swipe up from Control Center and ping it, and it makes a loud chirping sound, and I'm like, oh, there's the phone. I use that constantly. And whenever I'm installing software or trying to, do Apple Pay on my Mac or something, it will have me verify the purchase through tapping the side button on the watch. So those are most of my favorite smartwatch features, I guess, in total. I'm trying to think if there's other ones. Honestly, I like being able to check the time and check notifications if I'm in the shower. They tell you not to use your Apple Watch in the shower, but I've done it pretty much every day since the Series 2, and I've never run into an issue with it. But if something comes up or if plans change while I'm taking a shower, I'm like, oh, crap, okay, we got to rush. Or, oh, okay, I don't have to rush because plans were canceled. That happened to me, I think, like a couple days ago even. Someone changed their plans while we were getting ready to go out, and I got the notification off my watch. I was like, oh, okay, we don't need to go. How does the unlock Apple Watch work with the iPhone? It seems to be hit or miss for me sometimes. Works for me it works more than it should, frankly, because oftentimes it will unlock the phone even when I'm not wearing a mask, and it just didn't get a good look on my face. But I don't mind that, because as long as I have an option of locking the phone from my watch, if I was in a situation where someone grabbed my phone and was trying to have access to it, I could just lock it from the watch, and suddenly it's locked down. You know, they can't do anything with it. So I don't really have any complaints with it. It works really well for me. I don't use walkie-talkie very much. I couldn't get into a good groove with it. Do you think it's a good idea to buy a 27-inch iMac right now, or wait for what Apple announces this year? The thing is, it sounds like the next iMac isn't going to launch until next year. We could be wrong. Maybe it does launch soon, but from what we've heard, the larger sized 30-inch iMac or whatever it ends up being, it might not be ready until the spring. But I'd also really not recommend getting a 27-inch iMac right now unless you really, really need it and find a good deal on one. Check certified refurbished. I got to bring it up every live stream, I know. But don't spend retail price on an Intel iMac right now, because there's a high likelihood of it being dated, not within the next couple months, but at least within the next like 6 to 7 months. So if you can keep your current Mac and just live with that for another half a year or so, I would highly recommend it. That's the situation I'm in right now. Like, my iMac Pro is getting old, but it's still holding up, and I can still live stream and do my video editing off it. So it gets the job done, so I'm not in a rush. But if your old Mac is just unusable and you can't get stuff done on it, I don't know. I'd highly encourage going for like a try going for like a refurbished M1 Mac Mini if your old iMac is just so downright unusable that you need to upgrade, because there's like a under $600 M1 Mac Mini you can buy. And no, it's not a long-term solution, but you can use that for the time being, get the job done with that, and then sell it when you're ready to upgrade to the bigger size iMac whenever that comes out. We just don't know. And I would hate for you to buy a 27-inch iMac now, only for it to become dated very quickly next year. So that's a tough one. But I guess it just depends on how well your old Mac is aging. I'm considering getting an iPad Pro since I haven't had one since the iPad 2. Honestly, I think now is a good time to get it, because we talked about it in a previous stream, I know, but they're still available. I check them every day just to see if they've sold out, because in the past they would sell out really quickly. But if you go on Apple's certified refurbished page and find the 2018 iPad Pro, it's still $500 for a 120 hertz Face ID A12X, just an insanely good deal, and they're still selling. So I full-heartedly would recommend that over an iPad Air time and time again. No reason to get an iPad Air over that thing. I doubt Apple will ever release a foldable. Too much manufacturing complexity, and it'll have to cost equal to a large MacBook Pro. Yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to agree. I think it would be really cool if they made one, but they probably won't. Some people find the Apple Watch as a better alarm than the phone. Oh, yeah, that's another great example. I didn't think about that. Oftentimes, if you want to wake up and you don't want to wake up your significant other, or you don't want to wake anybody else in the house for some reason, the Apple Watch is just a very comforting, relaxing way to wake up in the morning, because it won't make noise. unless you wanted to. But the Taptic engine will just start tapping you when you wake up at the desired alarm time. You just get the brrr, you just feel it, and it wakes you up, but you don't have to wake up to brrr, brrr, the annoying iPhone sound. All the iPhone alarm sounds are really annoying, but the Apple Watch is just a little light, satisfying tap on the wrist. I've gotten up early. If I was getting up for something that my wife didn't need to get up for, I didn't want to wake her up, so this wakes me up. There's a bunch of nice reasons to get one. I'm not a big fan of backtracking with most things. If I had to say, I'd keep the touch bar around and create more uses. Yeah, I would like it too if Apple could find a way to make it more practical, because I do think there was potential with it. But Jonathan says, if they made the touch bar force touch so it was sensitive to touch depth, then I wouldn't mind it. Touch bar takes almost no pressure to trigger. I don't know. We must just use our keyboards differently, because I don't hover my fingers over the function keys and tap them, because that's what you would have to do to activate the touch bar. You would have to be physically touching your fingers on the function keys regularly, which I just don't do. It's like if I'm typing and using my keyboard, I'm touching here, or I'm putting numbers in here. I don't occasionally start tapping up here accidentally. I don't know. Maybe we don't get it. We use it differently. How many years of software updates will the 2020 iPad Pro get? I would not be shocked if it got 8, because that's what the iPad Air 2 got. So if the iPad Air 2 from all those years ago is getting 8 years, why would the newer, faster iPad Pro get less? So I would assume 8, maybe more, maybe 10 years, depending on how iPadOS ages. If there's some big fundamental rewrite that they decide you need a big GPU and a big CPU to be able to run iPadOS on these devices, then maybe, but I don't see that happening. I see iPadOS still being fairly incremental and small over time. Not much changing. I used to set my alarm to a song like the military death song with the bagpipes. Do you like the bagpipe military song? That sounds like a terrible way to wake up. I don't know. If I'm typing fast, a quick slide of my finger as I press a number does it. Really? I'm going to try to test that. How fast can I type? That's a website, isn't it? I've done this before live, but I'm kind of curious. Typing Academy. I'm going to find it. Submit. TED method? Yeah. Oh, God. They're going to make me log in. I want to just start typing. What? Why is there so many questions? Okay. Here we go. Let's do it. Oh, wait. Oh, the hotkey broke. Wait. Hold up. I was still on OBS. Okay. Come on, let me do this. Okay, speed round. Not looking. Oh no! I messed up. No! No! Oh, okay. My confidence is destroyed. This is probably really interesting to the audio listeners. Sorry, guys. That. Very. This is a weird sentence. What? Oh, I gotta hit space. Held up. What? Oh my god. I suck. I can do this. I'm not hitting the top buttons. I don't know how you're typing. But I'm not a very good typer either, so. No! Why? Dang it. Ah! I gotta speed up here. 74, 2.46 or 77 words per minute, 2 minutes. Practice your keyboard skills. Wow. It's like, Drew, you kind of suck at this. Well, if I'm typing in a hurry, yeah, that will affect my error rate. Oh, well. Do you have cellular on your iPad? Nah, just hotspot on your phone. It's easier. Let's see. I want to lobby Apple to remove the old Siri remote from all refurbished Apple TV units. Oh, do they have the old one? I didn't even think about that. I guess that's true. Let's see. I type sloppily. You should do the fast ABC thing from the MKBHD studio video. Oh, I saw that. I haven't tried that one, actually. Is it like how fast can you type the alphabet? Is that a different website? Let me find that. Now I'm interested. Type the alphabet. Huh. We got some crappy ads here. Okay. Oh, that's hard. I can't do this. I saw. Oh my God. Hold up. I don't need to look at the screen. I realize that. Nope. Oh, dang. Okay. I don't know why. I have to sing the song in my head, though. Like, I can't do it without the tune. Six and a half? That's not very good. I saw... Didn't Marquez do it in like 3 seconds? Okay. Okay, one more time. I'll try. Here we go. I was like, did I get it wrong? No, that was worse. Okay, I gotta stop doing these. I'm gonna do them all day if I'm not careful. I typed the alphabet really fast. I'm looking at the keyboard. I know. I didn't take like a... There were some of my friends in school that took like a typing class where they taught them exactly where to lay out their hands and stuff, and I didn't have that. This is all just like I taught myself all the typing. It is kind of hard. Don't we all type sloppily? That's what... Yeah, we do. That's why the delete key exists. Sloppily, yeah. Let's see. 4 seconds, but 6 is really good. Yeah. Marquez got them rapid fire fingers I can't compete with. I used iPad Air 1 for 7 years, then got iPad Air 3, 2019 version, less than a year ago. I didn't even think about iPad Pro. Oh, you got the Air 3? Wasn't like... Oh, less than a year. Wouldn't the Air 4 have been out? You just didn't want the 4, I guess. Okay. Well, fair enough. I guess there's nothing inherently wrong with the 3. We actually spread through work each day and then played games together the rest of the class. That's funny. Do you use your little finger when typing? Only pros do that. Yeah, I use all 10. We got to put a camera just designated to my... Oh, do I have that? No, it doesn't show it. Can I get it? Maybe that would be more interesting. Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's already hard to read the chat monitors downward like that way. There we go. There's our natural bokeh. Would you like to see the touchpad turned into a mini-like screen while keeping the feel of it? I don't know if that's possible, but it's an interesting idea. I don't know what it would be good for. Like a touchpad would probably have to get bigger if you wanted it to become a touch interface, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Apple's fake clicking is really trippy. It's really bizarre how real it feels when you're like clicking. And then all of a sudden, I remember experiencing that on my 15-inch MacBook Pro. I was like clicking around on stuff, and then all of a sudden, the MacBook froze for some reason. Stupid Intel CPU, and I was moving the mouse around, and then all of a sudden the Mac froze and it stopped clicking. It was like, you didn't get the click anymore. I was like, oh no, something must have gone horribly wrong. So it's really bizarre how good they are at that. I don't know what the touchscreen trackpad would be good for. Maybe it's Apple Pencil built in there. Someone had that pitch somewhere. Was it 9 to 5 Mac? Let me try to find that. They were like, what if the MacBook... Oh, yeah, here it is. I didn't get this. replace the touch bar with the Apple Pencil dock, but I was like, yeah, but where are the function keys now? There's just no function keys? The touch bar you could turn back into function keys if you wanted to. I didn't read this. Did they acknowledge? The patent says while the input tool is positioned in the recessed retainer, the user can provide input to the input tool in addition to providing input via the keyboard. What? Oh, what? I didn't see this part. There's like a mini touch bar on the side, and then you would use the touch bar. You'd use the Apple Pencil on this. Ew. Touch surfaces don't want to be vertical. Yeah, I know. No, thank you. I'm actually curious. I check the comments on these a lot. They're actually pretty interesting. Top comment. No. That got 30 upvotes. What a waste of space. Just attach it to the Mac the way it's attached to the iPad Pro. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Why wouldn't you just slap it on the side? Give me more battery. Give me more storage. Don't need no empty space. Epic fail. Stupid idea. Someone, meaning a lot of people, would close the MacBook and crack the screen. And cats, don't forget the cats, would do this intentionally. Bad idea. Someone said, what about an ashtray? That's a good point. Are you sure this is isn't a very early April Fool's joke? These comments are pretty good, actually, half the time. Especially when you watch something that's really bad and it just seems like obviously terrible. You go to the comments and they're pretty hilarious. When the iPhone 4 was released, I was joking with my classmates that Apple should never release an iPhone 12 and iPhone 16 because it sounded so lame, and I'm starting to believe iPhone 20 is possible. I actually think they might not ever make... If they go to 20, they might have to run past iPhone 17 Pro Max, and I think the syllables might get so bad that Apple might change the naming scheme away from numbers. They might go into the year... The 2022 iPhone or iPhone Air and iPhone Mini and iPhone Pro and Pro Max, or I don't know. I think they might have something else up their sleeve aside from just numbers. Yeah, AirPower's dead. There's not a potential revive. There was just some guy that claimed to have access to a prototype, despite the prototype not proving to work. All the prototype did was charge an iPhone. It didn't show 3 devices charging, and I've yet to see any prototype showing an Apple Watch charge anywhere. So I still think AirPower is stupid. MagSafe is the much better route. It fixes the same problem AirPower was trying to solve for a fraction of the price. If AirPower did come out, it probably would have been over $300 and not as portable as MagSafe Duo. So I don't need it to come back. I don't believe it ever will come back. I've yet to see any convincing evidence that it will. I don't care if some guy found a prototype and he's like, look, the iPhone charged on it. It's like, great. Show me how to get the Apple Watch charging on it. Don't think so. MagSafe's better. MagSafe's the future. But anyway, I appreciate all you members. We've gotten a lot of new members in the past month. I don't mean to plug it too hard, but my wife said we're going to let whatever the revenue is from YouTube members be our food budget. So if you want the Apple sheep to be able to eat, there's a good way to help. I mean, eat more. Obviously, we're going to eat no matter what. But some of you are probably like, yeah, Drew's too fat anyway. We don't need it. But either way, I'm very grateful for all the new members. And the super chats have been extremely generous as of late. It's the weekend for me now, so I'm about to sign off. EV video will be dropping in 1 minute. Mark my words, I'm leaking Tailosive EV. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I've had a lot of fun so far. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I should be uploading regularly again on Tuesday. But also the podcast should be dropping sometime either tonight or tomorrow, whenever Nick makes it home and is able to put some time into it. Jonathan's like, time to unsub. But thank you all very much. Hope you are enjoying the content, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.